He was 5 feet 9 inches. His serve averaged 92 miles per hour, slower than Michael Chang's. He never won a single Grand Slam. By every metric, Marcelo Rios had no business being the best player in the world. But on March 30th, 1998, this left-handed from Santiago did something that still doesn't make sense. He didn't overpower anyone. He didn't outserve anyone. He just engineered it. Here's how. To find out, we need to go back to 1998. Miami, Florida. The Lipton Championships. What the tennis world would later call the Sunshine Double. The tour's biggest names were all there. Andre Agassi, the American icon with 8 Grand Slams and a game built on pure, flat, devastating power. Pete Sampras, the most dominant server the sport had ever seen. Jim Courier, a 2-time French Open champion who hit the ball harder than almost anyone alive. These were the names everyone expected to be fighting for the top of the rankings. And then there was Marcelo Rios. 5 feet 9 inches, 159 pounds, 25 more than Michael Chang. Same height, more weight, and still a slower serve. A serve that opponents barely had to move for. Sports Illustrated had already called him the most hated player in tennis. He didn't give interviews. He didn't smile. He didn't perform for the cameras. Ilie Nastase, a man who had seen everything in this sport, called him the worst idiot I've ever met. Nobody was talking about Rios as a future world #1. But on that day in Miami, Rios walked onto the court against Agassi and did something nobody expected. He won. And with that victory, Marcelo Rios became world #1, the first South American in history to hold that ranking. He did it without a single Grand Slam title, not one. He remains to this day the only player in the Open era to reach world #1 without ever winning a major. So how is that even possible? How does a player with no power, no height, no serve, and apparently no friends in the sport beat the most complete players of his generation? The answer isn't what you think. Let's break down exactly what Marcelo Rios didn't have. First, the serve. In 1998, the average first serve speed on the ATP Tour hovered around 115 miles per hour. Sampras was touching 130. Rios averaged 92. That's not just a gap, that's a different sport. At 92 miles per hour, opponents don't step back to return. They step forward. They set up early. They take the ball on the rise. They immediately put you on defense. One player said returning Rios' serve felt like a practice drill. There was no free point, no weapon to lean on. Every single rally had to be earned from a position of disadvantage. Second, physical size. At 1.75 meters, Rios was giving up height to almost everyone he faced. Agassi was 5 feet 11 inches. Sampras was 6 feet 1 inch. Courier was 6 feet 1 inch. That height difference matters more than most people realize. It means less natural leverage on ground strokes. It means less reach on wide balls. It means high balls, especially to the backhand, become a structural problem, not just an inconvenience. At 1.75 meters, a ball bouncing above shoulder height on the backhand side is almost impossible to handle with conventional technique. Opponents knew this. They targeted it constantly. Third, the career window. Rios retired at 27. A back injury ended everything. His entire career at the top of the sport lasted less than a decade. His time at world #1? 6 weeks. 6 weeks to build a legacy that the sport is still trying to understand. So if Rios had none of the traditional weapons, no serve, no height, no longevity, what did he actually have? That's where this story gets interesting. Because what Rios built wasn't a game. It was a system. And the first layer of that system had nothing to do with tennis technique. It had to do with psychology. Sports Illustrated didn't call him the most hated player in tennis by accident. Rios was cold. Deliberately, strategically cold. He gave no interviews. He showed no emotion on court. He offered opponents nothing, no warmth, no respect, no acknowledgement. Nastase's quote wasn't an isolated opinion. It reflected a consensus across the tour. Players didn't like him. Journalists didn't like him. The establishment didn't like him. And Rios didn't care. Here's what everyone missed. That isolation wasn't a personality flaw. It was armor. When you play against the entire world, when you've already decided that no one is on your side, you stop playing for approval. You stop managing relationships on court. You stop worrying about what the crowd thinks when you hit a bad shot. You play purely. Every point becomes a problem to solve, not a performance to deliver. Rios had already lost the popularity contest before he walked onto any court, so he stopped competing in it. And that freed him to compete in the only contest that mattered. But the psychology was only the first layer, because what Rios did technically was something the sport had never seen before. Let's talk about the jumping backhand. At 1.75 meters, high balls to the backhand were Rios' nightmare. Every coach on tour knew it. Every opponent targeted it. The conventional response is to retreat behind the baseline, let the ball drop to a manageable height, and hit defensively. You give up court position. You give up time. You give up the point slowly. Rios refused. Instead, he jumped. Not a panic jump. Not a desperation move. A calculated biomechanical solution to a structural problem. From his inside leg, he would elevate at the exact moment of contact, striking the ball mid-air above the height where it was dangerous, and redirecting it at angles that were geometrically impossible from a standing position. Tennis.com documented this technique specifically. Their analysis noted that instead of repositioning their feet on a high backhand, players who use this technique choose to compensate by jumping, and that the result is an entirely different set of available angles. Rios didn't just survive the high backhand, he turned it into an offensive weapon. Marat Safin, one of the most gifted players of the following generation, adopted this exact technique. Sébastien Grosjean did the same. They didn't invent it. They copied it from Rios. Because what looked like a workaround was actually an upgrade. But even the jumping backhand doesn't fully explain how Rios controlled points the way he did. For that, you need to understand what was happening inside his racket. Rios used an unusually low string tension. Most tour players string their rackets between 55 and 65 pounds of tension. Higher tension gives you more control but less power. Lower tension gives you more power but less precision. That's the conventional trade-off. Rios ignored it. He strung his racket at a tension significantly below tour standard. And here's what that actually does. At low tension, the ball doesn't bounce off the strings. It sinks into them. It stays on the string bed for a fraction of a second longer than it would on a tighter racket. That fraction of a second is everything. Because in that extra moment of contact, Rios could redirect the ball at angles that a conventional string tension simply wouldn't allow. The ball would arrive at one angle and leave at another, sharper, more severe, more unexpected. Tennis analysts called it the trampoline effect. It wasn't power, it was physics. And it meant that Rios could take a ball hit directly at him. A ball that should have been neutral, and turn it into a winner down the line or cross court at an angle his opponent had no time to read. Marat Safin confirmed it directly. Best technique after Federer. Incredible how he anticipated the ball. Marty Fish was even more direct. The most talented player without a Grand Slam. Think about what that means. Fish wasn't saying Rios was unlucky. He was saying the talent was real. The architecture was real. And something else got in the way. That something else was time. A back injury at 27 ended a career that was still accelerating. 6 weeks at number 1. 18 titles, 5 Masters Thousands, 0 Grand Slams. The numbers don't add up by any conventional logic. And that's exactly the point. Rios never played by conventional logic. He reached number 1 in an era defined by complete players, men who served big, moved well, and won majors. Agassi had everything. Sampras had everything. Courier had everything. Rios had a 92-mile-per-hour serve, a jumping backhand, a low-tension racket, and 6 weeks. And he still got there. Not because he fixed his weaknesses, because he engineered around them so precisely that his opponents couldn't find them anymore. The jumping backhand turned a liability into an angle factory. The low string tension turned a power deficit into a control advantage. The isolation turned a reputation problem into psychological armor. Every perceived flaw became a functional component of a system designed to win without the tools everyone said you needed. Rios is the only number 1 in the history of the Open era without a Grand Slam. That fact is usually presented as a tragedy. A career cut short, potential wasted. Everything came easy for him, perhaps too easy. But look at it differently. He reached the summit of the sport without the one credential everyone said was required to get there. He was the first South American to hold the number 1 ranking. He remains the last pure technical architect to reach that height. No player since has gotten to number 1 by building a game the way Rios built his. From the physics up, from the geometry out, from the isolation in. What he proved in 1998 wasn't that you can win without power. It was something harder to accept, that the game doesn't always go to the most complete player. Sometimes it goes to the most precise one, the one who understands that every weakness is just an unsolved equation, and that the player willing to solve it differently will always have an angle that nobody else can see. Marcelo Rios didn't just reach world number 1, he redefined what it means to be built for this sport. Before hitting the best shots ever, I need to ask you for a quick favor. If you are finding this breakdown valuable, please take a second to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch without subscribing. It costs you absolutely nothing, but it makes a huge difference for us to keep bringing you this unfiltered analysis that cuts through the mainstream media spin. Rios' story is proof that the game isn't always won by the player with the biggest weapons. Sometimes it's won by the player with the most intelligent blueprint. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Who is the most unorthodox #1 in tennis history? And don't forget to subscribe for more breaking coverage of the stories that are reshaping our tennis world. Thanks for watching. This is KT Tennis.